July 29th, 1981. 750 million people watching around the world. The most spectacular wedding dress ever sewn. 25 feet of ivory silk taffeta trailing behind her. The Spencer tiara catching the light. St. Paul's Cathedral packed to the rafters. And a 20-year-old girl, stepping out of a glass coach, about to change the world forever. Lady Diana Spencer, becoming Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales. But what was she really feeling? What was really happening behind the cathedral doors, behind the palace walls, behind that extraordinary smile? The letter was written on September 27th, 1981. Diana was 20 years old. She had been married for exactly 2 months. She was writing from Balmoral Castle in the Scottish Highlands, the royal family's beloved private estate, where she and Charles were staying until the end of October. The letter was addressed to Katherine Hanbury, a former classmate from Diana's school days at West Heath Girls School in Kent, a private school friend, someone she trusted, someone she could be honest with. And honest she was. She wrote of her Mediterranean honeymoon aboard the Royal Yacht Britannia, that magnificent 412-foot floating palace, in the most glowing terms. We had a blissful honeymoon with endless sun and luckily calm seas. She described married life with warmth and quiet joy. It's wonderful being married. I think it's safe to say that, after 2 months. She wrote of adjusting to her extraordinary new royal life with a line of perfectly charming, self-deprecating humor. It's a case of playing with grown-ups. But then, buried inside this warm and joyful letter, came the line that has stopped everyone who has read it in their tracks. Writing from the green grandeur of the Scottish Highlands, from Balmoral and its wide-open mountains and rivers and skies. Diana wrote, "I adore being outside all day and hate London." 4 words, hate London. Written by the woman who would become the most beloved figure in that city's modern history. The woman who would walk the wards of Great Ormond Street Hospital. Who would open AIDS clinics in the 90s when others would not. Who would shake the hands of landmine victims. Who would light up the streets of the capital with her presence wherever she went. The woman London would eventually mourn with a grief so overwhelming it brought a nation to its knees. And in private, in a letter to a school friend in September 1981, she said she hated it. Because this letter does not stand alone. Over the years, through multiple auctions and archival discoveries, a collection of Diana's private correspondence has gradually emerged. And together, these letters paint an extraordinary and deeply moving portrait of a young woman caught between the public fairy tale and the private reality of royal life. Just 2 days after her wedding, on July 31st, 1981, Diana wrote a letter to Mark Simpson, a footman at Buckingham Palace, who had befriended her during the week she spent living there before the ceremony. She wrote, "My stay was made so much easier by your company, as it was so terribly lonely." 20 years old, the most famous bride on earth, and terribly, privately lonely. From the Royal Yacht Britannia during the honeymoon itself, written on August 15, 1981, Diana wrote to her personal secretary, Jane Parsons, describing the honeymoon as a perfect opportunity to catch up on sleep. Warm words, carefully chosen. But to those who know Diana's story, words that hint at an exhaustion that went far deeper than jet lag. And in another letter from the early honeymoon period, written to the family's former housekeeper, Maud Pendry, Diana called the honeymoon a tremendous success, and wrote that she and Charles had a glorious time catching up on our lost energy and sleep. Positive, loyal, gracious, and careful. But the September 27th letter to Katherine Hanbury is different. This is Diana writing to a school friend, off the record, off the throne, off the public stage. And this Diana says, "I adore being outside, and I hate London. Dear friends, we want to take a moment to say something important. Because some may read this letter and see in it the seeds of unhappiness. Some may reach for darker interpretations. But we want to offer a different reading. What this letter shows us is not a princess in despair. What it shows us is something far more beautiful than that. It shows us that Diana was real. She was a 20-year-old girl who had just married the heir to the throne before 750 million people, moved into one of the most formal ceremonial institutions in the world, and found herself navigating what she so perfectly described as playing with grown-ups. Of course, she preferred the open Scottish air to the stone corridors of London palaces. Of course, she was still finding her feet. Of course she was honest enough, with a school friend in private, to say what she actually felt. That is what made Diana extraordinary. Not the tiara, not the dress, not the fairy tale, but that absolute, irreducible, indestructible humanity. The ability to be real when everyone around her demanded she be a symbol. The letter is now heading to auction and is expected to fetch between £4,000 and £6,000. To whoever holds it next, they will hold something very precious. A piece of paper, royal crested, handwritten, and more honest than almost anything the world has ever been told about what it really felt like to be Princess Diana.